Hello and welcome to a new Retro Core. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at some run and gun games. So what exactly is a run and gun game? Well, in my personal opinion, a run and gun game should be a game where you run along, shoot things, and you're able to turn around at your own free will. Basically, that's what a run and gun shooter is. So we've got a couple of good run and gun shooters coming up in today's show, so why not just sit back and relax and see if there's anything out there that you've never seen before. Maybe we might uncover a few hidden gems in today's show. Charlie Ninja is about two ninjas who work as bounty hunters, bringing in the criminal leaders of various sorts. Despite the title, the two ninjas are actually called Roy and Lon. I have no idea what or who Charlie is, mind you. At first glance, Charlie Ninja seems like a Western made game with its Tex-Avery looking characters and its impossibly colourful backgrounds. This goes a step further when it appears that most stages are exaggerated parodies of United States history or culture. As far as the gameplay is concerned, Charlie Ninja is extremely tough. There's non-stop action all the way. Thankfully your main character controls just fine, plus has this very brief invincibility trick where he can hide behind an invisible sheet. Unfortunately, Charlie Ninja isn't a very long game. With only 5 stages, and even then the last one is pretty dull. Still, even though it's a short ride, it's a ride worth going on.
Gotta hustle.
And from a Charlie Ninja to a Mirai Ninja. At least this Namco developed game has a title with a meaning. Mirai actually means future. Now you may have never seen this game before, and that's no surprise, as it was only ever officially released in Japan. The odd thing is that there's actually a movie based upon the game which did get a release in the West under the title of Cyber Ninja, or in Canada it was called Warlord. Anyway, back to the game. As you can see, it's a typical ninja scrolling effort, in which you set off to find your stolen armor. The stages are packed full of enemies, so much so in fact that it becomes annoying by the 3rd stage. This is an arcade game, don't forget, so it's obvious they want you to put as many coins into the machine as possible, but I think they've slightly overdone it with the enemy count on this game. Another issue the game has is that you cannot aim your shurikens, meaning that they only go forward, making it a real pain to hit some enemies. Mirai Ninja is an okay game in small doses, but it's certainly not a classic. Running on Sammy's Thomas Wave arcade hardware, Blue Dolphin was one of the first games for the system, and it's rumoured to have been designed by some ex-NASCAR members. If this is true, it would certainly explain the similarities between this game and a fair few Metal Slug games. Or then again, it could just be a complete rip-off. If Sega would have been successful with the Dreamcast, we may have seen Dolphin Blue get a home release on the Dreamcast, since the Atomic Wave is basically based upon the Naomi arcade hardware, which is essentially a Dreamcast. Then again, in 2003 the Dreamcast was long dead in the West and pretty much dead in Japan too. I'm actually quite a big fan of Dolphin Blue. The 3D backgrounds fit in well with the 2D sprites. So much so that I've never actually questioned the two different types of graphics. I didn't really notice, to be honest. The gameplay in this game is typical, however there are a few twists. I love the kind of cluster grenade that your character shoots off when on foot. I also love how the dolphin is pretty much always around in the background, just waiting to jump in and help you out. When using the dolphin, you gain a few extra abilities. You still have the cluster grenade, but now your dolphin can also help out by attacking the enemies and smashing into anything on screen. This becomes extremely useful for taking out the bosses or when the screen becomes really busy with enemies. Crime City can be seen as a rip-off or heavily inspired version of Rolling Thunder, and in a way, it is. However, Rolling Thunder 2 is probably more of a rip-off of Crime City, since that came 1 year later and is pretty close in terms of gameplay. But enough about that. How is Crime City as a game? Well, to be honest, it can be a little clunky at times. I don't know what it is, but many title games seem to have a whiff of cheapness about them, and this is no different. While the controls work well, there seems to be times when your character will feel too big to navigate through the stage. Then there's times when it seems the only way forward is to take a hit. Putting these negative points aside, however, you'll find Crime City to be quite an enjoyable romp. Taito have tried to add a little bit of variety to the gameplay by adding some Super Shinobi-like car sections, and also scrolling some stages left to right, and even a little Cabal style section from time to time, where you view your character from a third person perspective. A mention must go to the music. Even though Taito's games can seem a little cheap, they mostly have fantastic soundtracks, due to their in-house sound team Zuntata. Crime City is no exception. There are a surprisingly high amount of quality tunes in this game. So some great games in that first part of the show. And what about that Charlie Ninja? A bit of a crazy name, and certainly a game that took me by surprise. It may be as hard as nails, but it's quite entertaining. In fact, a lot of Mitchell games are like that. They seem to make games that don't actually look Japanese, even though they are a Japanese company. Anyway, let's take a look at the second part of the show and see if there's any more hidden gems in there. I'm sure there's going to be a few.
Cyberlip. The military android has landed in the Old Town area. Proceed to that point right away and stop them. You are the last hope. Good luck.
One of the early Neo Geo games, and one that you would instantly think was a remake of Contra Spirits from looking at the first stage. but in reality, this was released in 1990, a good year or so before Contra Spirits. Unlike Contra Spirits, Cyber Slip is incredibly slow. This slowness is the game's main weak point. You'll find yourself dying many a time simply because your character moves like a sloth. It is possible to become accustomed to the slow pace, but it really does take quite a while before you do. Fans of the Contra series will be quite familiar with the weapon system used in Cyber Lip. You start off with the basic shot, collecting more weapons throughout the stage. These can be stored in your inventory and called upon with the press of a button. The only problem is, if you cycle past the weapon you want, you'll need to cycle through them all again to select the desired weapon. The title to this game is indeed a surprise. Surprise Attack is, well, surprisingly a very enjoyable run and gun game. The basic idea is to collect all the bombs within the stage and make it to the end. How many times have we seen that before? And that's what's so funny. Even though the concept to this game is basic, it's still great fun. The controls are really tight, making precise movements really easy to do. There are some unique twists to the stages too, such as anti-gravity areas. Here you'll find enemies all over the place, adding a bit of strategic element to the gameplay. You really do have to be on your toes in these stages, because if you want to take out a character without being hit, you've got to think ahead. And yes, one shot and you will be dead, so you really do have to think your way through these stages. As well as the standard side-scrolling levels, the game also features some boss areas. The bosses themselves will drive you nuts until you figure out their pattern. Thankfully, boss patterns are not so taxing. Between the main areas, you're presented with a quiz to test your knowledge of space-like science facts. Quite an odd addition to a run and gun game, but one that seems to fit.
Licks Rodeo! I'm gonna smash Lily!
Probably based upon some American cartoon that never made it to the UK, Wild West Cowboys of Moo Mesa continues the 90s trend of Konami's Western-made based arcade games. And what we have here is a solid action title featuring cows. Yep, I never would have thought I'd be talking about a run and gun game starring cows. I would imagine that like other Konami arcade games based upon cartoons, this one features most of the main cast. However, as I've never heard of this series, I couldn't say for sure. What I can say is the gameplay is typical Konami quality, before they turned into a corporation with the heads so far up their own ass they couldn't see forward.
It can't be! I don't believe it!
Here we go with some true hardcore run and gun action. The first Gunforce is a slow plodding game that saw an even slower and uglier release on the Super Famicom. Unfortunately, that's what people think about when you mention Gunforce. Little do they know that Gunforce 2 is some serious gaming. Looking just like Metal Slug and even using some of the same sound effects, it would come as no surprise that this title by Irem was actually developed by the same people who formed Nazca, who produced the Metal Slug games. In fact, some fans of the Metal Slug series like to call this Metal Slug Zero. There were all manner of items to destroy in this game, as well as a whole host of vehicles to commandeer. It's very clear to see where Metal Slug got its roots from. I do prefer the rescuing of the lovely ladies in this game though, rather than the stinky old guys found in Metal Slug. Fang may seem as a typical horizontal shooter. However, you don't actually fly as such, and you can jump, so in my eyes, that makes this a run and gun. One of the main draws to this game is the ability to build your very own robot, allowing for some great customization of your robot and its weapon power. The game starts off along the shores of Australia, and proceeds to Sydney, before being allowed to choose where you want to go from there. If a player chooses to explore Australia, they will have a variety of places to choose from, while if they pick New Zealand, they get a whole host of new places to choose from. Pretty obvious really, isn't it? For a game released in 1991, it's safe to say that this game does look a little ugly. However, in 1996 and 97, the game did get a release on the Saturn and PlayStation, with the Saturn version being the one to go for. Those releases featured the basic arcade port, plus a whole new arranged version with new music and graphical updates.
Alright!
See, I told you there'd be some more hidden classics in that second part of the show, didn't I? Now this one I've never even heard of. I'm sure it's based on a cartoon, as I mentioned in the video just before. Wild West Cowboys, never heard of it. But the game is surprisingly good. Basically, it's Sunset Riders with cows. How can that not be good? Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed today's show. Next show, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to be taking a look at just a system. We're going to take a look at the Super Famicom. Now, this was known as the Super Nintendo in the West, or the SNES, or the SNES, however you want to call it. But I know it as the Super Famicom since my original machine, way back in the 90s, was a Japanese system. And since I now live in Japan, that's what I actually own. Obviously, really. So we're going to be taking a look at the hardware and some of the games that run on it. And of course, being RetroCore, we're only going to use original hardware and original games. So we'll take a look at the box art as well. So I hope you look forward to that, and if you do like that show, we'll do some more system focused shows as well in the future. But for now, keep on gaming and enjoy your game time.